So I would like to today I would like to present um, one of one of the theorem we use to go further in this series of lecture with Gerard up to this finiteness and compactness theorem. And so there is a statement I would like to mention. And before stating it, I would like to motivate it a little bit and say a few words about growth of group, which will be a little bit complementary with what Soma said in his series, in our series of lectures. So I would like to say a few words about growth of groups. So the setup is the following. So as usual, you have a group gamma with S a finite set of generators, and so I recall you that you had this Cayley graph associated to this set of generators with some distance, okay, and in this Cayley graph we can consider metric ball with respect to this metric of radius k, okay, and what one calls a growth function v gamma s of k is just the cardinal of this ball. Okay? And we're interested in what kind of growth it can have, and Soma gave examples of this. So if gamma is z to the r, then for any set of generators, then for any set of generators, the growth behave like k to the r. Okay, it's a polynomial growth. And on the other hand, if you take the free group with r generators, then for any set of generators of the free group, for example, take the canonical one, then the growth function behave like, if r is a number of generators, behave like 2r minus 1 to the k. So it's growth exponentially. Okay, so you have these two kind of behaviors of the possible growth of group. Okay, and here you have two typical example of group with different behavior. Okay, so polynomial and exponential. And there is another kind of another example which is interesting. You could consider gamma the nilpotent, the Heisenberg group. So it's a very nice group. So it's a group made of, it's a subgroup of matrices. So you consider matrices with integer coefficient. Okay, and you can consider as a set of generators the generators where you put 1 and 0 elsewhere, and 1 and 0 elsewhere, etc. Okay, you have 3 generators. Okay, and apparently you could think that because there are 3 generators, the growth should be what? So one could expect that the growth of this group with this set of generators I described would be of order k to the number of parameters, but it's not the case. And in this setting, the growth is in k to the 4. Okay, so and the reason, so I encourage you to show this, and the indication to show this is that the commutator of the two generators x and y equals z. Okay, so x means when I write X here, I mean the matrix, so X is the matrix with 1, 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, and Y is equal to the matrix 1, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, and Z equals the last one, okay? So this is 3 generators, and with these 3 generators, you have K4, and this relation allows you to show this. It's not completely trivial, but I play a little with commutators, and you will see that it appears in some sense. Okay. Okay. All right. So. All right. So did I say all what I wanted to say about this? So maybe I didn't define. Okay, so this group is I would like to. So this group, gamma, this last group, is a nilpotent group. So who doesn't know what nilpotent group means? Doesn't know. Okay, everybody knows. Okay. So this is a typical example of a nilpotent group, and it has this property. And I should add that every nilpotent group, yeah. Okay, so the Heisenberg group is this group of matrices with X, Y, Z real coefficient. And here I have taken a lattice in the Heisenberg group. I shouldn't have called it Heisenberg group. Thank you. Okay. Okay, so and so this polynomial behavior, which here is in K4, is not special to this nilpotent discrete group, and there is a theorem of Bass and Guivarch, which says that for every nilpotent group, for every finitely generated group, gamma nilpotent, then gamma has polynomial growth. So I can say that gamma has polynomial growth because, as you know, and I think someone said it, if it has polynomial growth for one set of generators, it has polynomial growth for every set of generators. Okay? So, and the theorem I would like to mention, the other theorem I would like to mention about this story is that there is a converse of this theorem, and it is a theorem of Gromov, and it shows that if gamma, a finitely generated group, has polynomial growth, so I can say if gamma has polynomial growth, then gamma is virtually nilpotent. So it's almost nilpotent. Virtually means, I think I already said this, but I recall it. Virtually means that there exists gamma prime, a subgroup of gamma with finite index, which means that there are finitely many cosets, modulo gamma prime, okay? And gamma prime is nilpotent. Okay, so it's a very strong theorem because you have absolutely, you have a kind of weak property, a weak geometric property assumption on the group, and you deduce a strong algebraic consequence for this group. Okay, and okay, so if you are interested, I encourage you to look at the blog of Terence Tao, who has given simplified version of the proof of this theorem, which is completely understandable at very low level. Okay, so and I would like to have a remark which is an exercise related to this, okay? So I certainly don't want to prove this now, but the proof of this theorem starts with a trivial observation that I let you in exercise, and really you can do it during the lecture, or maybe after. The exercise is the following. So assume that gamma S has polynomial growth, so assume that V of k, so V of gamma S, I will write it V of k, to simplify, is polynomial, so it's less than k to some n. Okay, so assume that gamma has polynomial growth, like here. Then there exists a constant strictly larger than 1 and a sequence of integer tending to infinity such that v of 2kn divided by v of kn is bounded by this constant. So here you recognize the measure, the counting measure of the ball with respect to S of radius 2k in the Cayley graph divided by mu x gamma of the ball of radius k. Okay? Where you just count elements in the Cayley graph at distance less than 2k divided by the number of elements at distance less than k. So it's this quantity is a kind of doubling. I mean, it's exactly the kind of quantity we know how to estimate, and so we call this C doubling. Okay, so at scale kn, the balls are the ball of radius kn is at most C doubling, which means that when you double the radius 2kn, then you cannot increase the number by a factor more than C. Okay? So it is C doubling at scale. I would like to call this property C doubling at scale kn. Okay? All right. So please do this exercise. It's very elementary. Okay. And even more, think of an example. Okay, so if you think at this case here, so in this case for Zn, you have really an equivalent. There is a constant here, but the volume of ball of radius k is exactly k to the r. So here it's obvious that you have this property where C is this constant to the r, and on the other hand, for the free group, it's clearly not true. Okay? So this property is trivially verified for every k, not only for a sequence of k in the case of ZR, and not for the free group. Okay? So now. With this, is there some question so far about this? No. So maybe now we'll state this theorem. So we will spend some time on this theorem because it might appear a bit tough when you see it for the first time, and so I will ask you to really look at it carefully and ask as many questions as you wish. So I write the statement and I make comments. And it's related to all what I said before. So it's a theorem of Breuillard, Green, and Tao. And this theorem, we will use it in a fundamental way in all what we are going to say. And again, I mean, it's not necessary. I won't give the proof of this theorem, but you have to understand what it says. this theorem says the following. For any integer p, there exists another integer n of p such that the following holds. So, for any group G, with a finite set of generators, so as usual, a finite set of generators, if there exists a finite subset A of G, so A finite, such that the two following property holds. So the first property is that when you look at A times A, I will define what it is, then its cardinal divided by the cardinal of A is less than P. And the second property is that A is large in the sense that it contains what I have called Bs of np, which I would like to write as S to the np, n of p. N of p. So what is, okay, so, and the conclusion is, so I will explain this in a while, and the conclusion is that G is, same conclusion as in the Gromov theorem, is virtually nilpotent. Okay? So please look at this theorem and start asking you questions, and then ask to me. And before that, I comment. Sorry? Yeah, so I have to say what it is. So what I mean by S of n of p is just the ball. It's shorter to, so it's a set of elements which can be written at a product of less than np element. So it's a ball with respect to the S metric of radius n of p. Okay, so this is the first thing what I would like to know. Yeah, it is S, exactly, S dot S dot S n p time, okay? Sorry? ACG, so it's contained, it's not a C, it's A is a finite subset of G, okay? So A times A, it's like here, it's a kind of Minkowski sum, like in the event talk. So it's a set of all elements A, B, with A in A and B in A, okay? The set of all product of all elements in A, okay? Okay? And so this is a kind of doubling property, okay? Because you take a set and you multiply by itself, so you kind of double this set, and this assumption says that this set A is P doubling, okay? But this assumption says that this set A is large. So I have not said it, but I say it now. The function n of P will tend to infinity when P tends to infinity. Of course, if you take any set A, you could compute this, and then you find a number, and you decide, so it is less than this number, the real value of this. But of course, this set has no reason to be large, okay? Okay, so it's okay. So these two assumptions goes against each other in some sense, because this doubling property tends to say that A is not too large, but this assumption tends to say that it has to be large in order to get a conclusion. Of course, you don't want to show that every group is virtually nil. Okay, it's not okay. So I could phrase this theorem saying that if in a group G you can find a subset, a finite subset A, which is p doubling and which is large, large meaning large with respect to p, then the group is virtually nilpotent. Okay? It's a very good question. There is no formula. And okay, so it could be because it's okay. So it's a theorem. Yeah, the proof is not constructive. Yeah, right. So you have to okay. So of n of p, that's a very good question. No bounds. I mean, it's just there exist. It would be nice to get a bound, of course, of this, and it is getting a bound of this is related to a work of Breuer and Fujiwara, which okay. So there are some work on this question. So it's okay. Thank you for asking. And okay, so maybe is there other question about it, about this statement? Right. So this has nothing to do with with hyperbolic group, and we use it. I will use it immediately for certain subgroup of discrete subgroup of hyperbolic group, and in this case, it's a good remark. Maybe I will say it later. In the case where the group G is acting on a delta hyperbolic space, then virtually nilpotent. If you don't like nilpotent, virtually nilpotent means virtually cyclic. Okay, and if you get rid of this, virtually is related to existence of torsion element in the group, and if you don't like it, you just say, oh, it's nilpotent, and then it's in the case of hyperbolic group, it's cyclic. Cyclic is better, it's just Z. Okay? Okay, so are there any further questions about it? So if not, I would like to immediately to apply this to get some some geometric information for group acting on delta hyperbolic space, and I did some notation. So I don't remember if I or Gérard introduced it already, but it's good to say it again anyway. So gamma now will act on a metric space, and I consider a number, a positive number R, a real number, and I denote sigma R of X to be the set of gamma in gamma, such that the distance between X and gamma X is less than R. Okay, so picture, you have X, an element, and you have the orbit. So the group is discrete, so in the space X, you have a discrete orbit of X, and you draw a ball centered at X of radius R, and you pick up all those elements which are trapped in this ball, and I will consider now gamma R of X to be the group generated by those elements. Okay, like we did in the bound on Bishop-Gromov, but anyway. Okay, so it's a subgroup of gamma. Okay, so now here's the theorem which. So maybe I let this. Can I erase? I'm sorry. Maybe you have not written, so I let you. Sorry. I want to keep the statement here, so maybe I erase this. and I keep just the statement. Okay? So the application I would like to derive from this is the following. So you start with delta hyperbolic space. A group gamma acting properly on this space. So all these actions are proper. And right, so and I assume that the quotient is compact, so I assume that the diameter of the quotient is less than D, so our usual assumption, and that the entropy of XD is bounded above by H. And the conclusion is that for any X in the space, for any R smaller than some number, which I will explain, that some number epsilon 0, which depend on those quantity, so delta, D, and H, and I will tell you what are this constant. Then gamma R of X is virtually nilpotent. So cyclic because of my remark of before. So what is the statement? So I say that if you look at sufficiently small ball, I have not finished. I have to explain what is this constant, but what this, without knowing what it is, so it says that there exists a constant such that if you take at any point the orbit of this point and the set of points of this orbit which are not too far, so R is smaller than this constant epsilon, then the group generated by this element is virtually cyclic. Okay, so group generated by isometry which moves not too much generate a cyclic group. Okay, and what is this constant epsilon 0? So epsilon 0 is a quotient of two numbers. So maybe I should write it in order that everybody see it here. So epsilon 0 is R0 divided by N0, where R0 is the famous constant 20 or 10, I don't remember, 20 D plus 2 delta, and N0 is equal, so I'm sorry, there are explicit constants, but okay, so we prefer to make it clear. So it's not that important, but so this is the integer part. So there is what is important here is that this number depends on delta D and H, all the quantities, which explains the dependence I wrote. So this bracket here is just to take the integer value plus 1, and N is the function in Breuer-Green-Tao theorem. So this N is this function here. Okay, so P is this integer number, and N is this, okay? Okay, so what you have to retain of this, to remember of this, is that when you consider a discrete group acting on a delta hyperbolic space with quotient of diameter less than D and the entropy of the space bounded above, then subgroup of gamma generated by element with small displacement, which moves a point less than some constant, universal constant, is virtually a billion. Okay? Okay, so maybe I can erase. So I'm in trouble because the board is. So let's try to do. So the proof is very simple, actually. So, I mean, the proof of this is simple. Of course, the hard thing is done here. And in order to derive this from here, it's very simple. That's what I mean. So the proof goes as follows. So, yeah. Say it again. Where are you?
About the index of gamma Rx.
The index. Gamma Rx, yeah. So this group is generated.
No.
Oh.
I'm saying that about the index of that group.
Ah. Okay, we have no information. We just know it's like this. Okay, it's a good question. So we have no information. The theorem doesn't give any information on the index of gamma Rx into gamma prime. It just says that it is finite. Okay, and it would be interesting to have a bound, on the index. Sure. Okay, so the proof goes as follows. The idea is to apply the Breuillard, Green, Tao to the group G, which is just gamma R of X. Okay, I look at this group and I want to apply the former theorem to it. And okay, so I think I defined everything. And and so I apply this to G and to A. So A is a finite subset of G. Okay, and it will be defined as the set of gamma in gamma, such that the distance between X and gamma X is less than R0. So R0 is just this 20D plus delta. So this constant depends only on the geometric constant. And in order to deduce that G is virtually nilpotent or virtually cyclic in our context, then it's enough to check the assumption. Okay? Check the assumption of the theorem of Breuillard, Green, and Tao. Okay? So the first assumption deals with the doubling property, and the doubling properties. So can be derived this way. So the first observation is that when you look at A times A, then it's certainly contained in the ball centered at X and of radius 2R0. Because this is a product of elements which move X less than R0. Then when you do the product, then you get 2R0 just by triangle inequality. Okay, so the distance between X and GHX is less than the distance between X and HX, maybe GX, plus the distance between GX and H. Okay, so I should have put H and here H and here GX. GH. Okay, do it. So, okay, so GX plus GX. Okay. Okay, so the distance between X and GHX is less than this, by triangular inequality is less than this, and so this is less than R0, and this, because G is an isometry, is less than R0, okay, so 2R0. Okay. So you should never do an exercise that you have not prepared before at board. So it's trivial, and then we have to so that the cardinal of A dot A divided by the cardinal of A is less than the cardinal of bx, it's less than, how should I say that? It's less than mu x gamma of mu x g of bx 2r0 divided by mu x g of bx r0. Okay? This represents the number of points of the orbit by g in the ball of radius 2r0. Okay, so it's because of this, it is exactly what I have. And remember that yesterday Girard explained that, so this is a kind of doubling estimate. So this we can estimate by our Bishop-Gromov inequality. And you observe that here G is a subgroup of gamma. And yesterday, Girard explained to you that you can derive a Bishop-Gromov inequality for subgroup, for subgroup of a group. And then this is less than mu x gamma, which is a quantity we know how to estimate, of x. And you lose a little bit about the radius, so it's 2r0. So maybe I should write it. Okay, so maybe. Where? Yeah.
The ball center at x, no, above. Yeah, so that is in your metric space x.
Yeah, this is in x.
So what does it mean for the group to be contained? From A dot A to B?
Okay, so, sorry, yeah, right. So I shouldn't, okay, so, right, you are, okay, so I messed up all this. So A dot A is not contained in this ball, but it is contained in the set of elements in gamma, thank you, such as the distance between x and gamma x is less than 2r0. Thank you very much. Okay? This is what says this. Okay? So, of course, this is a subset of the group, but it is not a subset of the space. So this is exactly this. Okay? A times A is contained in the set of subset of element of gamma which move less than 2r0. This is what I have shown here. And then the quotient of these two quantities is exactly what I said. So it's a number of elements which are moved by G here. So it's G here, sorry. So you apply it to G, okay? So this set is exactly contained in the set of G, subset of element of G, which move less, and this is exactly what says this quantity. Okay, mu G of bx2r0 is exactly the counting measure, so the number of element gamma which send x not further than 2r0. Okay, is it all right now? Thank you very much for that. Okay, so I was here, so this, so just to I am showing this property, and so I mentioned that yesterday we learned how to estimate by Bishop-Gromov such quotient for subgroup of a group gamma for which we can do it, and so it's the same doubling quantity, but we have to modify a little bit the radius, the radii, and what you have to add here is just r0. So here you have 5 r0 divided by 2, and here mu x gamma of b x r0 over 2. Okay. And this you can estimate, and by our Bishop-Gromov. So here I have, maybe I shouldn't write here. If I write here, nobody see. Okay, so I go here. Okay, so this is less than 3 times 5 to this constant time e to 15h R0. Okay, it's not important what are these constants, and this constant, so it is this constant that I have raised, but okay, so this is this 3, 5, 25 over 4 e to 300 h d plus 2 delta, and this number we call it p, the p of this theorem here, okay? All right, so now we are almost done because, okay, so we have a p here, and now we check the second assumption. So A has to contain S of S to the n of p, and it's not very difficult. So so S, an element G. So I'm taking an element G which is in this set. So G can be written as a product of at most n of p element in S. Okay, and S is a generating subset of gamma R. Okay, so I didn't mention it, but it was obvious. So I apply the theorem to G equal gamma R of X with its system of generator, which is sigma R of X. So an element G is a product of at most n of p element, and then the distance between X and Gx is less, by the same argument as here, triangle inequality, is less than the sum of the distance between X and Gi of X, and then it is less than n of p, R0, and we are done because, because each of these elements displace X at distance less than R, so it's n of p times R, and this is exactly, if I'm not mistaken, it is exactly R0. Because I recall that the n of p we have chosen n of p to be R0 on n. We have chosen okay, so this was our this n of p has been chosen. So I'm sorry because I erased what I wrote here. It has been chosen less than n0, n0 which was n of p, and n0 has been chosen to be n0 has been chosen to be. So I'm sorry. Let me just look at my notes. Right. So R is okay. So R is smaller than epsilon 0. So R here was supposed to be smaller than epsilon 0, and epsilon 0 has been defined. It's not a difficult point. So epsilon 0 has been defined by R0 over N0, and N0 was the n of p. Okay, and the N0 was the n of p. The n of p, where p was what I have defined here. Okay, so every constant depends on the geometric constant I gave. Okay, I'm sorry I messed up a bit the end of the proof, but it's now clear. Okay, any question? So far what I have done. So what I have done, I have written a very deep theorem, and I have extracted some geometric information from this theorem. Okay. Not yet geometric because we have just said that subgroup of such a group here which displace less than some constant is cyclic or virtually cyclic. Okay. So now I want to draw some geometric consequence of this. Okay. So yeah. Yeah, so you can think that X, you could think that X is a universal cover of this space, for example. Okay. So I will give example now, and we will see that it is very. Can I erase? Okay. So, let's do a little bit of geometry and interpret what I said in terms of geometry. It will be much more simple. I mean, it's not complicated. What I said is not complicated, but okay. So, I would like to talk about the thin, thick decomposition, what it means. So you have a so you have, as usual, a group acting on a space, a metric space, and properly as usual, and I fix a number R positive, okay, and I will define, first I will define the systole of this action at a point X, so I consider X in the space, and I define the systole of this action at X as, so I will suppose in all, I will suppose that this action, just to simplify, so all what I'm saying, it doesn't require such an assumption, but it's simpler. So I will assume that gamma is torsion-free. So you can assume that it is a fundamental group of something. It's torsion-free, so acts freely. No fixed point, okay? And so that now I can define the systole of this action at a point X as the infimum of the distance between X and gamma X, and the infimum is taken over all elements which are not, of course, the identity. Okay? And since you have no fixed point, and since the action is proper, this number is positive for every, so it's a positive number. Okay? All right, so now I define, so this first definition, I define the thin part, the R thin part of the action to be the set XR, the subset of X of points where the systole is less than R. Okay? And the sig part, of course, is the complementary set. Okay? So an example. So look at your favorite example of an hyperbolic surface. So let's consider this surface. So assume that there exists a loop, a closed loop here, the loop which separates in two, and look at the lift. So this hyperbolic surface is a quotient. So here X equals a Poincaré disk. So let's call it H2, and there is a group acting on this Poincaré disk whose quotient is this surface. Okay? And you see, if this loop is small, if the length of this loop is say r, then if you take a point, so this is a lift of this closed loop, and of course because this loop is closed here, there exists an element in gamma which closed up this loop here. So there exists an element gamma which moves this point to this point, okay? Which moves x to gamma x here, okay? So if this loop is less than r, then this element moves this point x to a distance less than r. And if I look at, so if let's say that this loop is strictly smaller, has a length strictly smaller than r, then the thin part will look like, so let me just draw something and explain. So you see the group will translate this geodesic everywhere in the Poincaré disk, and this picture here will travel all along the disk. And what I am drawing in red here is just the thin part, okay? So you have to believe one thing is that, so if gamma is an isometry of the Poincaré disk, an hyperbolic isometry with two fixed points at infinity, so Athanase explained to us that hyperbolic isometry have two fixed points at infinity, so there is an axe which is preserved by this isometry, and the displacement of a point x by gamma is minimal on this axe, okay, where it equals to the length of this geodesic. And when you consider point at further than this, farther than this axe, then the displacement increase, and at some point it becomes larger than r, and even it goes to infinity. Okay, so the thin part in this situation is certainly so. I say that I have considered, so it's obvious that the thin part contains this part, the neighborhood of this geodesic, and why you have to consider also all this orbit, just because by definition the thin part is invariant by the group. Okay? Trivial observation. Not I shouldn't say that, okay? So when you so this is the thin part. So if x is in the thin part, then gamma x is also in the thin part. So in fact I was right. But okay, so gamma xr is equal to xr. So the thin part is invariant under isometry, and this is what says this picture. Okay, you have a subset of this type in H2, which is invariant under gamma, and which is the thin part. Okay. Any question so far? So I am a bit late on what I was to do. So I have 5 minutes. Okay, so I have the time to state a geometric proposition which settle what I have just said here on this example. Okay. So the proposition is the following. So the proposition will tell you, will describe you the structure of the thin part. So you consider xd hyperbolic, and non-elementary non-elementary means that that X is not S1. Okay? So let me just put it this way. I take an hyperbolic space and an action, as usual, a proper action on X, and I assume that the quotient is compact, as usual, and also I assume that gamma is non-elementary, which is the same as X is non-elementary. Non-elementary means that gamma is not virtually Z, so which is equivalent to saying that X is not the circle. So there exists an example of hyperbolic space which is not interesting for us, which is a circle. Circle is, I mean, the X S1 is a quotient, so X is R. So X shouldn't be R. So there is an example of hyperbolic space which is not interesting, which is R, which have S1 as a circle, as a quotient. Okay, so I exclude this trivial case, and the statement is the following. First, for every y in the thin part, there exists a maximal virtually cyclic subgroup G of y containing sigma r of y. Okay? And the map, so what I'm telling here is that, okay, so I take a point in the thin part, y, then I can associate to y virtually cyclic, in a canonical way, a virtually cyclic subgroup of gamma, which contain all the elements which move y by less than n, by less than r, sorry, okay? And what I'm saying now is that this group is locally constant, okay? The map which associates to this point the group G of y is locally constant, which in some sense you see in the picture, okay? So what you have, so y what is gy in this picture? It is just all elements of gamma which share this axis. It's not very, very difficult, okay? So, and the second thing is that if xr is non-empty, then xr is disconnected. Okay? Like in the picture, okay? So, of course, I have defined the thin part for some r. It could be empty. I mean, you could consider a space which is where the element, an action where the elements are moving far away. Okay, so but when there are really a thin part, like in this picture, then it is disconnected, like in this picture. And so maybe it's a right moment to stop. And okay, so I'm sorry to have been so slow, but anyway.